All right. Well, welcome back, Merc Nation, to the Merc Method. I am your host, Merc. As always, I am so glad that you are here today. A lot of great things happening lately with the Merc Method and the continuation of growing. We were in 43 countries now with the podcast. The book is really starting to hit. It hits a lot on TikTok. I have a lot of great people that follow me on TikTok. Continue to grow that Merc Nation, and also have been working on a children's book, which I'm very, very excited about. Um, if you go on TikTok, I just posted. His name is Murky McCurt. Um, McCurt actually is named after my dad, after his first name. So there's a lot of nice ties in it for him as well. So a lot of great things coming, and like I said, I'm very excited about that. Also, I wanted to get back on and make some episodes. I've been asking some people on social media some topics that they would like to see maybe an episode or two made. So today we're doing that with a suggestion about finding peace with things that are unfinished. So I know there are moments in our lives where we find ourselves stuck waiting for something to happen before we allow ourselves to be happy, right? Guilty. We tell ourselves once they apologize, we'll move on. Or once they understand what they did, I'll finally have that peace. Maybe once the situation gets fixed, then I can finally breathe again. But what happens when that moment never comes? What happens when the apology never arrives? What happens when the person who hurt you never recognizes the pain they caused? Or what happens when the door we wanted to open stays closed? This is one of the hardest lessons life teaches us, right? Sometimes we are waiting for closure from people who are not capable of giving it to us. Sometimes we are waiting for circumstances to change before we give ourselves permission to heal. And the truth is, people cannot always be found on the other side of the resolution. Sometimes peace has to be created right in the middle of all that uncertainty, right? I think so many people struggle because we believe every story is supposed to have a perfect ending. I know we believe that nothing is perfect, but we still kind of hope for that perfect ending, right? We believe every question is supposed to have an answer. We believe every wound is supposed to be acknowledged by the person who gave it to us. But life does not always work that way. As I talked in other episodes that I've made about doors being closed, I never found out why those doors were closed. I would like to know why, but I don't think I'm ever going to get that answer. And I had to come to the conclusion that I probably won't ever figure out that answer. Sometimes you have to become your own closure. Sometimes you have to say, I may never understand why this happened, but I understand that I still have a life to live. I had to figure that out. I had to keep moving forward. Sometimes you have to stop looking backward for something that is not coming and start moving forward to what is still possible. And of course, that does not mean what happened does not matter, because it does. It does not mean that your pain was not real, because it was. It does not mean you ignore the hurt. It means you decide that your future deserves more attention than your past. We have to keep moving forward. I think one of the heaviest things we carry as human beings is the need to understand everything. I am one of those people. I need to figure out why this happened. I even break it down into other little sub outlets on building up to why this door was closed, or why this person said this, or why they did this. Our minds naturally search for answers. When something hurts us, we replay conversations. We analyze the situations. We ask ourselves, what could I have done differently? Why did they treat me that way? Why did this happen to me? Sometimes our minds become a courtroom where we are constantly putting the past on trial. We revisit old moments, hoping that somehow we can find a different ending. We think we can analyze it enough, we can change it. If we think about it enough, we can finally understand it. And there are some situations where no amount of thinking will give us peace, and that takes our energy away. That's why we're so drained all the time, looking for those answers. Sometimes the answer is simply that people make choices based on where they are emotionally and mentally and spiritually. Sometimes people hurt others because they are hurting themselves. Sometimes people leave because they are not meant to continue the journey with us. Sometimes doors close because they were never meant to lead us where we thought we would go. The hardest part is accepting that everything that happens to us will make sense immediately. It took me a very long time to understand that I was not going to get the answer right away. Sometimes it took me years to figure out that that was the best move. There have been moments where I wanted answers, and I'm sure you can feel the same way. Moments where I wanted someone to explain why things happened the way they did. Moments where I wished I could go back and change something. But eventually I realized that holding on to those questions were keeping me connected to a moment that I had already passed. Sometimes the question changes from why did this happen to what can I do with what happened? That is where the growth begins. That's where we start to understand what is going on. We spend so much of our lives looking outside ourselves for peace. We think peace comes from having enough money, or peace comes from having everyone like us. That was something that I had to really work on. I wanted to be friends with everybody. I wanted no conflict. I just wanted peace. And it doesn't work that way. But if peace only comes when everything around us is perfect, then we will always be searching. Because life is always changing. There will always be another challenge, another disappointment, another unexpected moment that we did not see coming. Peace is not the absence of problems. Peace is knowing that problems do not have the power to destroy you and who you are. Think about a storm. Storm does not ask permission before arriving. It does not check whether you are prepared or not. It simply just shows up. But eventually, every storm passes. The same thing happens in life. The storm comes, the difficult seasons come, the unanswered moments come. But you learn that you are stronger than the storm. Finding peace within yourself means learning how to stand steady even when life feels uncertain. I know it can get heavy. I know it might be heavy right now, but it means saying I may not have control of what happened, but I have control over how I choose to move forward. Letting go without getting an apology is one of the hardest conversations. How do you forgive someone who never apologized to you? How do you move forward when someone never admits they were wrong? A lot of people believe forgiveness means saying what happened was okay. But forgiveness is not about approving someone else's actions. Forgiveness is about releasing yourself from carrying something that was never meant to live inside of you forever. Holding on to anger can feel like justice. Sometimes we think if I let this go, they win. But the truth is, every day you carry that pain, you are the one paying the price, not them. The person who hurt you may move on. They may not even realize how deeply they affected you or care. And here you are still carrying that weight. Forgiveness is not saying you were right. Forgiveness is saying, I refuse to let what you did control the rest of my life. Sometimes the closure we want from another person is actually something we have to give ourselves. You have to tell yourself, I know what happened. I know it affected me. And I know what I deserve moving forward. Your healing does not require their permission. I think one of the biggest challenges in life is accepting unfinished chapters. We want every relationship repaired. We want every dream fulfilled. We want every question answered. But some chapters end without warning. Some people leave without explanation. Some opportunities disappear. Some versions of ourselves have to be released in order to move forward. And of course, that is painful. But unfinished does not mean meaningless. A chapter can end and still teach you something. A person can leave and still impact your life. A difficult season can happen and still create growth. Sometimes we are focused on the ending that we forget to appreciate what the chapter gave us. Maybe that relationship taught you what love should not look like. Maybe that failure taught you resilience. Maybe that loss taught you appreciation. Maybe that difficult season introduced you to a version of yourself you never knew existed. Not every ending is a punishment. Sometimes an ending is protection. In life, we want a map. We want to know exactly where we are going. We want guarantees, but growth rarely happens when we have everything figured out. Sometimes life requires faith, not necessarily religious faith, but faith in yourself, believing in yourself, faith that the chapter can be better, faith that your current situation is not your final destination. Think about how many times you thought something was the worst thing that could happen, like you were going to be broken, only to look back later and realize it pushed you somewhere better. There are moments where life removes things from us because we are holding on to something that no longer matches who we are becoming. The challenge is trusting the process while you are still in the middle of it. I know that can be difficult. I'm kind of in the moment of that right now, but you have to trust the process. It is easy to believe when everything makes sense. The real test is believing when nothing makes sense. A powerful part of healing is learning how to become someone you can depend on. Maybe people spend their lives searching for someone else to validate them. They wait for someone to say you are enough, you matter, you're valuable. I used to be like that. I kind of still am a little. I like validation, I'm not going to lie. 'Cause sometimes you don't get it. But eventually you have to learn how to say those things to yourself. You have to become your own encouragement. You have to become the person who reminds yourself that your story is still being written. Your worth does not decrease because someone failed to recognize it. Your value does not disappear because someone walked away. Your purpose does not disappear because one chapter ended. Sometimes finding peace means finally choosing yourself. Moving forward does not mean forgetting, does not mean pretending something never happened. It means learning how to carry your story differently. The things we experience become part of us, everything. They do not have to define us. Your scars are proof that you survived something. Your struggles are proof that you continued. Your journey is proof that you are still here. The goal is not to erase your past. The goal is to stop allowing your past to control your future. You can honor what happened and still choose happiness. You can miss someone and still continue living. You can acknowledge pain and still find peace. Both things can exist at the same time. I had to figure out a way to move forward with the losses that I've had in my life, and I started the Merck method. I had to figure out a way to keep moving forward, but acknowledge what had happened. I know you're probably going through a lot of things right now, things that are heavy, but we have to figure out how to keep moving forward. One of the biggest reasons we struggle to find peace is because we are constantly trying to control things that were never ours to control. We try to control how people see us. We try to control how people respond to us, how we try to control the outcomes of situations or timing or the way our lives are supposed to look. But when things do not go according to plan, we create in our minds we feel like we failed. But sometimes the greatest peace comes when we finally understand that control and peace cannot always exist because control comes with fear. Control says I need everything to happen this exact way in order for me to be okay. Peace says even if things do not happen the way I want, I trust that I will be okay. That is a completely different mindset. There's a difference between giving up and letting go. Giving up says nothing matters anymore. Letting go says I have done everything I can, and now I trust the process. Sometimes we exhaust ourselves trying to force doors open that were never meant to open. I tried that. I tried to put myself in doors that were never meant for me to walk through, and they forced me back out for good reason. We chase people who have already decided to walk away. We hold on to situations that continue to drain us because we are afraid of what happens when we finally release them. But sometimes what feels like losing something is actually making room for something new, something beautiful, something better. A lot of times we pray for growth, but we do not realize growth requires change. And change requires releasing things that no longer fit who we are becoming. The hardest part about letting go is that we often want proof that something better is coming before we release what is hurting. But sometimes faith requires releasing first. Sometimes you have to say, I do not know what is next, but I know this cannot continue. I do not know where this path leads, but I know I cannot stay here. I may not understand the timing, but I trust that my life is still moving forward. Peace begins when you stop fighting reality and start working with it. We don't talk enough about how much we lose ourselves when we're trying to survive. Sometimes we spend so much time trying to keep everything together that we forget to check in with ourselves. It's another thing I'm guilty of. We become the person everyone needs us to be, the strong one, the person who helps everyone else, the person who says, I'm okay, even when deep down we know they're struggling. And eventually look in the mirror and realize we do not even recognize ourselves anymore. We have spent so much time fighting battles that we forgot who we were before we started battling. But the beautiful thing about life is that you can always reconnect with yourself. You are not limited to who you had to become during your hardest moments. Sometimes survival creates a version of ourselves that was necessary for that season. That does not mean we have to stay there forever. Maybe you became guarded because someone hurt you. Maybe you stopped dreaming because disappointment became too familiar. But healing is the process of remembering who you were before the pain convinced you otherwise. The real you is still there. Person who laughed freely, the person who believed anything was possible, the person who had dreams, the person who wanted to make an impact. Sometimes finding peace is not about becoming someone new. Sometimes finding peace is about returning to yourself, that part of you that's still there. A lot of people put their happiness on hold. They say, I'll be happy when I get the job. I'll be happy when I find the right relationship. I'll be happy when everything finally falls into place. What happens when we constantly live in the future is that we miss the life happening right now. We stop being present. There's a danger in believing your peace exists somewhere ahead of you because tomorrow always becomes another tomorrow. The destination keeps moving. You reach one goal and immediately create another reason why you cannot be happy yet. Peace is not something you find after life becomes perfect. Peace is something you practice while life is imperfect. You can be grateful and still have goals. You can be healing and still have pain. You can be growing and still have questions. You can be proud of yourself and still want more. Two things can exist at the same time. Sometimes we think we have to wait until everything is fixed before we appreciate where we are. But look at how far you have already come. Think about the versions of yourself from years ago. Think about it. Think about the things you survived that you thought you would never overcome. You are already living through answered prayers that a past version of yourself once begged for. Look at where you are right now. Do not overlook your progress because you are focused on your next destination. Sometimes peace comes when you finally recognize that this moment is also part of the journey. Part of finding peace is forgiving yourself. And sometimes forgiving yourself is harder than forgiving anyone else because we know every mistake we made. We remember every decision we wish we could change. We remember moments where we ignored our own intuition, moments where we stayed too long, we trusted the wrong people, we did not believe in ourselves. And sometimes we punish ourselves for things we did when we were simply trying to survive with the understanding we had at the time. But growth requires compassion toward ourselves. You cannot judge your past self with the wisdom you gained afterward. The person you were 5 years ago did not know what you know today. The person you were during your hardest season was doing the best they could with the tools they had. Give yourself credit for surviving. Give yourself grace for learning. Give yourself permission to become someone different. Your past self does not need your hatred. Your past self needs your understanding. But every version of you helped create the person you are becoming. The amazing thing about finding peace within yourself is that doesn't stop with you. When you heal, you change the energy you bring into your room. When you find peace, you become someone who can bring peace to others. You become more patient, more understanding, less reactive. You become someone who does not need to win every argument because you are secure in who you are. It's a process. A person who has found peace does not have to prove their worth. They know it, and that changes everything. But it is baby steps. One of the greatest gifts we can give people is not perfection, it's just being present, being someone who makes us feel seen, who doesn't make us feel alone. Maybe your struggles were not just meant to break you. Maybe they were meant to prepare you to help someone else. Maybe the pain you survived became the message someone else needs. Maybe your story becomes someone else's hope. At some point, you have to stop searching for peace like it is something outside of you, because peace was never something you had to earn. It was never something someone else could give you. It was always something you could choose. The world will continue changing. People will continue surprising you. Plans will continue changing. Life will continue bringing unexpected moments, but through all of it, you have the ability to return to yourself. You can breathe. You can choose gratitude. You can choose forgiveness. You can choose hope and kindness. You can choose to believe that even though some things were left unresolved, your life can still be complete. Because closure is not always an ending. Sometimes closure is acceptance. Sometimes closure is realizing you do not need every answer to move forward. Sometimes closure is finally saying, I release what I cannot change. I appreciate what I learned. I honor what I lost. And I am ready for what comes next. As I close out this episode today, I want to thank everybody, as always, for continuing to listen to the Merc Method and these episodes. I greatly appreciate every single one of you. If this episode resonated with you and hit home, share it with somebody else. We're just trying to help as many people as we possibly can with this. And as always, I leave you with this. Stay grounded, stay kind to yourself, and remember, strength begins with honesty. Until next time.